Welcome, Farewell fans. I'm your host, MNG, and I have another great interview for you today. Now, I will say that with this interview, it kind of hits home for me, and I'm pretty sure it hit home for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. So I have today Sally Raymond, and Sally, thank you for coming onto the show and having this conversation with us. I know my fans are going to appreciate it, and I definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate you appreciating it, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much, MNG.
You're welcome. So, Sally, can you just give the guests, before we get into the questions, can you just give everybody just kind of just a brief overview who you are and what you're doing?
Yes, I'm a long-term psychotherapist. I've been author and a speaker now, but when I had my children, I was just a C student in high school. I graduated, but that was who I was. And I married at 19, and I had these two little kids, and they were the most, especially the firstborn has been the most powerful teacher in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one has also taught me a lot too, believe me. You'll hear about that. But I've just been open. I've had over 29,000 sessions now. And I feel very honored to tell you that I've lost none of my clients to suicide. But I did lose my son to suicide. And that happened just as I was being licensed. And so none of the stories I knew of him as a mom could have possibly ended like it did, which meant to me that I missed his pain. And that was intolerable. But being a brand new psychotherapist, I had the tools and insights I'd never had before to possibly find out what I missed. And it took 28 years, but I had to find out, and I had to do something about it. And so that's what has just brought me here.
So, Sally, one thing, and I know it's been a while, but I definitely want to offer my condolences because I know that what you're going through is by no means easy to lose a child at all.
Nope.
And grief is not limited to suicide, but it hits a lot different when you have the questions to try to understand why that happened.
Yeah.
And you and the questions are going unfulfilled, and you're left wondering, and you're left with the playback of the phone call, the incident over and over and over again. No matter how hard you try to forget it, occupy yourself. You continuously go through that, and I've suffered through grief as well on different levels, whether it was suicide, whether it was medical, whether it was just just natural causes. Okay, now we've had had a conversation at the media summit, and we talked about it. Now, can you share what that initial grief and loss felt like for you?
Yes, I sure can. It's almost beyond words, but the first thing I want people to know is in the DSM-4, which is the Bible that psychologists use to understand their clients and categorize and everything, there was a scale of stressors at one point. It's not there anymore, but at one point there was a scale of stressors, and the top stressor was the death of a child. And it was equal in stress to surviving Auschwitz. And that's absolutely correct, because when that happens, you are left in a mausoleum, and you're looking for any sign, a piece of thread, a hair, anything that reminds, gets you closer to that one that you lost. And so when I got the call from my mother-in-law telling me that my son had killed himself, I fell. I fell and I died. I, as a mother, utterly died. There was nothing left because he was part of my life for 23 years. He was from my body. He and I found out that way that we'd never really been separate. His body died and mine, as soon as I heard, it died with him. And I was completely demolished. I couldn't do anything but cry. I couldn't do anything but lay on the bed, and I couldn't see anyone. I couldn't talk to anyone. I have another son. I couldn't even bear to see him. And I just, for like a week, I didn't eat, I didn't drink, I didn't do anything. I was just as dead as I could be. And I had to stay alive for my other son. I couldn't do what I wanted to do, which was, end the pain with myself, because I felt just like he had.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, so that's how it felt initially. It's like everything collapses in. The magic Etch-a-Sketch goes, lips up, and there's nothing,
right.
nothing, nothing. You don't know who you are. You don't know who you were. You don't know who you could be. You don't know anything. You are back at square zero.
And I can't explain how much that resonates with me. And it's not just the loss of a child, it's a loss of somebody that's close to you, somebody that molded you, somebody that was just always there for you, no matter the situation, no matter the scenario, no matter anything.
Right.
The mere presence of them being there and no longer being there at all. And that is the most devastating part, is because at one point in time they were there.
Yes.
You walk past a room, they're there. And just their whole essence is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to reside with that. You have to live with that.
Yeah, I couldn't. And the worst part is my son had been nothing but a super success. I mean, he forced me to go back to school because when he was like 5 years old, I was driving, and I'm a bad driver, and I like to drive fast, and a lot of cars don't. And I usually have some words for those people. And my son was behind me in his car seat with his little brother on the other side in his car seat. And I was driving, and all of a sudden, my eldest, John, piped up at 5 years old and said, "Mom, what kind of example do you think you're leaving your children right now?" And I was like, oh my God. He was 5. And I was like, if that's what he's going to be saying these at 5, what's he going to be saying at 8 or
Right.
9? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer him. I don't know what to say. I mean, he's going to outstrip me so fast. I'm like, how do I stay his mother? How do I keep credible? How do I keep any power? I was a single parent. And so I was like, I have to go back to school. And so I did. And because of him, I couldn't get a B because he never got a B. To
Right.
say that the mom, I had to show him that I was worth talking to and listening to and believing. And I ended up with highest honors because I couldn't, he forced me to because he was so good. And at 14, he was in calculus at UCSB, and with 250 regular STEM students and that he got the top grade of the class each of 3 quarters and was inventing new proofs. I mean, he was beyond. So what was worse, while he lived, he was just excellent, beyond excellent. I mean, at 16, he was invited into Carnegie Mellon University in theoretical math. And in
Mm.
4 years, he finished both his bachelor's and master's in theoretical math. And so he'd done 6 years of work in 4. And he got out. And I mean, I was the proudest mom you've ever known. And a
I,
year later, he killed himself. It was unbelievable. It was immense. And I had to find out where did I miss? Where did I go wrong? What did I do? What happened to my son? What was his story? What
I,
was the story he would say that would make perfect sense of his suicide? Because there must be one. And now with the tools as a psychologist, I could possibly go back and do that kind of retrospective and find what I missed. And I did. I did. It took years and years, but each story I found would just throw me into another round of grief and pain and agony because I had missed it. I had missed it.
so let me ask you this. In going through your grief and going through the steps, what were the steps that you went through to not overcome, but to get past or deal with the grief on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'm a fairly buoyant person, and I couldn't believe he was gone. I couldn't believe he had done so much in the years that he had uh, that somehow it was erased. And I remember at his memorial, my Aunt Louise, who loved him very dearly, um, but she was Italian and she's very staunch and very sure of herself. And she came up to me and I was just a wreck. And she said, "So what was he supposed to do for an encore?" She said, "Get married, have kids?" And she snorted and she just said, "Wasn't he done?" And I felt like screaming at her. Of course, I'd never scream at her, but I felt like screaming, "No, he was just beginning." But what I didn't know, can I tell you a story?
Yes.
A month after he died, I was demolished. I got a cold call one Sunday afternoon from a woman, and she said, "You don't know me, but I know about your son." And she said, "I'm a psychic, and I have something very important to tell you, but I won't tell you over the phone. You'll have to come to my house. I'll give you a free reading, but you'll have to come." And at that moment, I would do anything. She lived in Sedona, Arizona, about 300 miles from my house. And my boyfriend at the time had to drive me because I couldn't drive, but I went. And she walked me into the house and she sat me down in the living room on the floor. And she had these giant crystals at north, south, east, and west. And we sat in the middle and she started talking. And I don't remember everything. It was an hour long, but I'll never forget this part. She said, "Your son came and did what he needed to do and left. But you and he share the same purpose for being on earth. He finished his part. You'll finish the rest." And I had no idea at that time what she meant, but I think I do now. And I have a feeling that every single person lost is just the same thing. Their part is done. You'll finish the rest. It's not, it's to grieve, it's to suffer, but it's also to do something about. And that's what I've been trying to do ever since.
And what is it that you believe that you have to finish?
I had to wake myself up. I mean, his death, his suicide forced me to go over all that I missed. And I'm finding out that everything I missed is still alive, happening today. None of the stories that took him from superstar to suicide are dead. They're all walking around, and I see a lot of them in my therapy office coming in, the same as, and they're the same stories my son had that took him down too. So I can't be his mom or a psychotherapist if I don't tell the stories in a way that would help other people survive and live a wonderful, happy, successful quality of life forever. I have to do that. It's only fair. He was just too excellent, and he was my teacher. I feel he's still my teacher. He will always be my teacher, and I'm just trying to follow through.
Now, for a parent or a friend, family member, what are signs that they should be looking for?
Really
Because
good question.
some people, and this is from my experience, my auntie committed suicide.
Oh.
And we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was going on. There's a lot of speculation going on there. And I was cool with my auntie, but we wasn't close because I rarely ever seen her. But I seen how it affected my mom. I seen the questions that her sisters and brothers had because they didn't know what happened behind those closed doors.
Right.
And there's a lot of questions, a lot of unfulfilled responses, and grabbing at straws, and what could we have done? What could we have missed? Why wasn't we there? Missed time. When somebody passes on, regardless of how it is, you wonder about the time that you had missed with this person.
Mm-hmm.
How you wish you would spend more time with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there and think like, while I was doing this, I could have been with them. Or was it a conversation that they may have said something and I wasn't paying attention to what they said, and I missed a key detail in that conversation, and it weighs with you because you see a person one day and then they're gone the next, and the only thing that you can think about, the only thing that really just vibes with you is, was there something that I missed in previous conversations that could have led me to believe that they were going to commit suicide?
Yep, absolutely. That is absolutely what all the survivors are left, with these same questions that just absolutely persecute you and persecute you and persecute you, because there's really no answer, because the only person who could answer those questions isn't there. It's just absolute. It's a torture. It's truly a torture. And, every single person who's suicidal, they don't realize there's a galaxy of human beings around them, surrounding them, loving them. And the only reason that galaxy exists is because they're the core of it.
Yeah.
And when the core disappears, the galaxy goes berserk. There's no core. And everything crashes and changes and morphs and all the things. And we are those satellites that get completely devastated, and our orbits and everything else are no longer the same.
Right.
And will never be the same again. because it all depended on this one person being where he was or she was. And now she's gone. And so nobody realized, a lot of suicidal people think it's just them, that they're not going to affect anybody else or just for a little while. They don't realize they're going to destroy a whole galaxy of other people in ways that are all unique, but will just ratchet out, and affect everybody. And I know my son didn't have any idea, and I'm sure he thought it was just him, but it wasn't. And I mean, the stories are incredible. But
So I'll share
yes,
something.
please.
So there was a time when I was younger, and I was going through abuse.
Hmm.
Okay. And there was and I was in my teenage years,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very dark place. It was a very lonely place.
Yes.
It was a place where it's not unexplainable, but the place is so dark and lonely that even the cheeriest of person
Mm,
can't get through to you.
you're right.
Okay. It's such a heavy cloud and weight on your shoulder that even in a room full of people, it still feels empty.
Oh, absolutely.
And in those times, I thought to myself that life, and I'm sure you have heard this time and time again, life would be so much easier if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Life would seem almost painless if I wasn't here, because you don't think about the consequences to others when leaving.
Yes.
And this is my own personal experience
Wow.
with grasping on the idea of suicide,
Mm-hmm.
with trying different ideas and methods, because let's be honest, that space, that void, that emptiness, it comes from the pressures of society. It comes from different avenues. Mine came from feeling like I wasn't wanted. Mine came from, you know, not really having the what I would consider at the time the best of friends,
Mm-hmm.
comparing my lifestyle to others' lifestyle, a very depressive state I was in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And you know, when I tell people the story of my abuse, kind of like the little bit of isolation from my family, because I had isolation from my family. Okay. And feeling like people have turned their back on you because
Mm-hmm.
they have left you, even though they don't know the predicament. You just assume that they know the predicament because you know that you're in it and you're going through it. And even if you have the conversation, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking that, I can leave this world, and the only thing I can keep thinking of is I would be at peace if I leave. Everybody will be at peace and move on if I'm no longer here, being that burden to them. If and that's a story and a mindset that once you have it one time, it becomes a continuous conversation periodically or frequently, again and again and again.
Mhm. That's
For
true.
some people, it becomes harder to tune it out and they succumb to it.
Yes.
For others, it's a conversation, but then they go on and they do something else.
Yes.
The voice is not as loud as it was the first time, but the voice is still there.
Yes.
The void is still there. The depression is still there. And sometimes it's just a trigger.
Yes.
You
But it,
know,
yes. But it sounds like it's something that happened to you, but it wasn't of your making. You've done nothing wrong. But you were a victim,
that is true.
but at the same time, that's so hard when you're a kid. You're a
Very.
teenager and you're trying to just, live your life, and that you're living in this place where you are being targeted and you can't escape it. And we all want to escape. We
Right.
all want to get free, and it sounds like you did get free, but in the meantime, you've gone to this very dark place. And you know that, yes, there's a way to get out of it, but
Yeah.
that's the most extreme choice.
And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm free because it's something that you continuously carry with you.
It's true.
And it also manifests as well as self elsewhere because emotions are very powerful.
Yes, they are.
So it can manifest itself in other ways: alcoholism, drug
Oh,
abuse,
abuse,
you
absolutely.
know, anything.
Yes,
It you may not be the type of person that is willing or pushed to that edge of taking your life, but you could be that person that will abuse themselves through alcohol and other various addictions
yes,
to remedy
yeah,
those feelings.
absolutely. And it's so interesting. I thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful, MNG. And my son also was molested at 3, and I found out immediately, and I had that guy put in prison, but I couldn't change what happened to my son.
No.
I couldn't change that. And when something like that happens, he was 3, and he thought he was too bad. His words were, "I'm too bad a boy." And I said, "You've done nothing wrong. You survived. That's all we can do sometimes when people can do things, but that's not who you are.
Right.
That doesn't define who you are. You are the potential of all the stars in the universe. You're everything. You can be anything. What somebody does to us does not define who we are."
Right.
But I couldn't take that experience away from him. Even if I put the guy in prison, it didn't matter
No.
for his psychology and yours too. And you carry that, and you always wonder, you always have that out in the back of your mind that this is something I could do to get relief. We aren't guaranteed that, by the way,
And
but
by
not
no
at all.
means.
And I sense that my son is not. I don't know. I can't really say, but he's not gone. MNG, he's not gone, because from the moment he committed suicide, from then on, I kept getting signs
Mm-hmm.
that that gave me hope. And I hope you have found signs in your experience that has given you hope and meaning, and shown you that you are worth living, and you're worth living well. Despite what happened to you at one point, that does not define who you are. You are the sum of all the universe, whatever you want to be, and we're not here by an accident either. Each one of you had a 1 out of 7 million chance of even existing. And that was back in your grandmother's womb when your mother was a fetus. And her, that little tiny ovaries, those two little baby tiny fetal ovaries, you were one of 7 million human potentials. And those ovaries started culling and culling and culling all this, your potential brothers and sisters, because there's no way 7 million babies are going to be, allowed out. And what it's doing is concentrating the energy in the survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And only 500 of those ever get released to even potentially become a human.
That's
But
true.
here you are. Here you are, despite 7 million, 1 in 7 million probabilities that you are here. And that's the truth for every single one of us. And I wish that people, I had to find this out the hard way. And I wish my son, and I wish every human being would realize how incredible the probability is 000 that you are even here. And the fact that you're here can't be random. It just can't. And so, I just want to say, I'm so glad to be talking to you right now. And I so appreciate you talking from your heart like this and telling these things, because people need to talk about them. We cannot hold these secrets. They are toxic. They are dangerous. They are going to destroy your life.
They will.
And you have to talk about it. You have to share, but not with your friends and everything else so much, but you really need to talk with experts who could really help you, because we have to lift that energy and get it out of your body, out of your head, out of your mind, so that you can be free, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I am a firm believer of, having that of therapy. I am a firm believer of therapy. And I know, because I went to therapy myself, and the strategies and the tips that they give you to be able to manage your life. Because let's be honest, some people's lives go unmanaged.
Yes.
And that's where you have these high intense situations, issues, people in jail because they don't understand how to manage their life, manage their emotions, manage their thoughts, manage their actions.
Right.
You have to be able to, you are your own company.
Yes.
When people run a company, they don't let employees go to bat because they have rules and they have processes there. They have procedures on how things are handled and how you should go about them, how you should conduct yourself. You have to have those same rules with yourself. You have to be able to manage yourself. And if you don't have or learn the tools to manage yourself, then therapy is the best place to learn how to manage and regulate the things that goes on within inside you that you may not have the tools to regulate in the heat of a moment or any situation.
Absolutely. Can I give you a tip?
Sure.
The first thought we ever think about anything is going to be our worst case.
That is true.
And that goes back to the primeval jungle, where the limbic system, that's the part of the brain that is the emotional brain. That's where it came to be. That's the first structure that helped us save our lives in the primeval forest, where everything around us was dangerous. If you didn't think the worst case thought in a dangerous forest full of savage beasts, you were going to probably be lunched, because you wouldn't be able to save yourself. And so the limbic system is all organized around, thinking the worst case first, so that to survive, if we think the worst, then we're somewhat prepared to run or fight.
Right.
Or freeze. But nowadays, I don't know about you, but I haven't met a single saber-toothed tiger.
No.
But our brains are still anything that helped us survive throughout time, all the eons, never changed in the brain. So that part of our brain is still running us And it's always thinking the worst case first, which has the least likelihood these days of being true.
Right.
And the more you focus on the worst case, the bigger it becomes.
That's true.
Yeah. And so what psychologists tell people when they're thinking a worst case and I got to escape, I can't live here, I can't make it, I can't survive this, these kinds of thoughts, you go, wait a minute, those are your worst case. What's more likely? Or what do you prefer to have happen? What do you prefer to do about this? What would make your life better? What would make you proud and excited and thrilled? And whatever you focus on, the first rule of hypnosis says, whatever you focus on grows.
Right.
So if you focus on the worst case, it's going to grow and it's going to overwhelm you and become all of who you are. If you think about the best case, that too has equal probability of becoming bigger and bigger and bigger the more you focus on it. So we have choice. We don't have to sit there and be prey to something that started in the primeval forest because everything around us was so dangerous.
Right.
We have power, conscious power, to think about what we want this to be and how we want to, and whatever we decide it is how we're going to behave.
And see, I like that because, and this is coming from a person that was very negative to any type of outcome, very pessimistic to a lot of things. And a few things I learned along the way is that, one, you have to look at both sides of the coin. There's nothing wrong with looking at the worst outcome, but just as equal to the worst outcome, there is a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So even if you focus on, well, if I apply to this job right here, I may not get a call back. It's a possibility. But on the other side of that, you could get a call back. But if you think about, oh, well, I'm not going to get a call back, so you just never apply because you just think you're not going to get a call back. But you forget the other 50% of that, which is you could get a call back. You know, and then I also realized that when you have a positive mindset, it can equate to a more likely outcome than thinking negative. And for example, and this is going all the way back to when me and my friends used to hang out at the mall. Just hang out at the mall, go and buy stuff, walk around the mall all day long, because teenagers, what else do you do with your time when, there wasn't Amazon at the time. You had the mall. You had to go to the mall and physically shop. And we would be there and we would go talk to girls that's walking around. Now, some of my friends was, when we see somebody that we determined that was out of our league, what do we say, hey, man, I don't think she even in my league. Why would I go over there and talk to her? All she gonna do is turn me down. You already counting yourself out. So then, you hype yourself up, you go over there and talk to her, and then out of nowhere, you're just surprised because you actually got a phone number. So now you're surprised and you're shocked all at the same time because your mind was so focused on the negative that the positive didn't even dawn on you. And now you're completely overwhelmed and shocked with happiness and glee because this person said, yes, you can have my phone number.
Yes. And so, why would you, this is where we sabotage ourselves and keep ourselves from what could be.
Yeah.
We sit there and we're gerrymandering ourselves into a very small and negative place because we are too afraid to try. We're too afraid to get rejected. But, what you're describing is just your path unfolding before you. And it's the negatives, that's being shut down and told, no, we don't have a job for you. But this is your path finding itself, finding your way to the right job, the right girl, the right life, the right everything.
Yeah.
And we have to get rejected because there's a million different paths. And if they don't winnow down, and how do they winnow down? By you getting rejected and killed? No, 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 no. But that doesn't define you. That doesn't mean that's your path. You're never going to get anywhere. It's your path winnowing down to prove to you where you really need to go, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And we don't know what path is ours. It's just but the path tells you where you go. The path, trust the path.
That's true.
Um,
And added on to that. So the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh yes.
Robert. I read his book, and one of the things that he said in the book, which is always stuck with me, and I got a story that this applies to. So in the story, in the book, it basically states that when you tell yourself that you can't do something, your mind instantly shuts down, and you can no longer think of ways to try to do something, right? So, for example, if you were looking at purchasing a house so you can rent it out, and your mindset was like, well, I don't have the money to do it, so how am I going to do it? Your mind already recognizes the negative and says, you know what, I'm not going to try to think of any avenues or how to do anything. Okay. But if you sat there and told yourself, I can do it, I just need to figure out how to get the money and start exploring ideas, then your mind starts to work harder with exploring ideas of how to retrieve the money. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, real life example. Me and my son was working on this car. He came to me and said that he believed his alternator was going out. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and look at it. So bought a new alternator. And he was like, well, I want to do it myself. I said, fine. So we're taking the pieces off, and the alternator was under one of the coolant hoses. Okay, it was like the return hose, so under the coolant hose, and it was a very tight spot. And I said, hey, go ahead and take those last bolts out and go ahead and pull it out. So he's trying to maneuver it out. No, I took it out, but he was trying to maneuver the new one in. Okay, so he's trying to maneuver the new one in, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, man, I can't do it. And I said, no, it's not that you can't do it. You can do it. You just got to figure out how to get it in there. I said, I was able to figure out how to get it out. So obviously you can get it in. So you see me take it out. So it's not a doubt that you can fit the new one right back the way in there, the same way I took the old one out. But he was ready to give up. He had set it down and looked at it. And I'm like, you can get it in there. You just got to figure out how to get it in there without damaging anything else in the engine bay.
Can I say something?
Sure.
And you lived past your own horrible nightmare where you really contemplated dying and giving up, to be able to tell your son, yes, you can. Congratulations. That's courage. That's perseverance. That's a triumph. You're passing on the greatest message ever to your son because of your own pain and your own experience. And you know that nothing is bad and it is but we can choose what we think about it, and that is going to make everything work out. Yes. I mean, congratulations. That's huge, MNG. That's just huge.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you for, living, when it felt like there was no hope left. There was nothing you could do, and it'd be better off, blah, 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 but it wasn't. And you have a son now, and you can give him those kinds of messages. That's what we live for.
Yes.
And give hope to the future and help them find their way through the dark moments and the hopelessness and all that, and realize that's just a moment. Past that, there's hope. There's light. There's always dark, but there's always light coming. And so it's so important. And can I tell a little story about my own son, my other son? But this is the boy who I lost. This is his little brother. He was 18 months younger than his elder brother John, and to live in the shadow of a genius is not a fun place to be. If you're it is really bad, because there's no way you can compete. There's nothing you can do to distinguish yourself. You look stupid. And I look stupid too, because my son was so bright. We all look stupid compared to him. I mean, and so my little one, when he got to school, they put him in special ed. They said that he had speech impediments and learning disabilities, and they put him in special ed. And I thought he was fine, but that's what they did. And but he ended up testing out about at the 2-year mark, but then he'd lost 2 real years of school, so he stayed really marginal. And then at 14, he became the biggest truant San Marcos High School ever knew. He has the highest number of cuts ever recorded from San Marcos High School in a year, despite everything I could do and everything the school could do. And he'd leave school, and I'd get the call from San Marcos saying my son never showed up. And I would take off out of work and fly past the school in my car looking for my truant son in Santa Barbara. I'd end up at the beach, because where else is a truant in Santa Barbara going to go? This is the beach. And I'd scour the perimeter like a buzzard looking for my truant son and never find him, and have to go back to work. And at 5 o'clock, I'd come home, and there he was. And I'd yell at him and hit Stonewall, and the next day I'd do it again. But what I didn't know is that he brought a book to the beach with him every day called Getting Straight A's. The schools hadn't taught him any study skills, so he took it upon himself to learn how to learn. And he read that book over and over and over at the beach while he was looking like the biggest loser of all time. And when he went back to school the next year, he went from a 1 point to a 4 point, maintained it through City College, and then went on to Cal Poly in aeronautical design engineering, and graduated with an offer from Lockheed, which he turned down, saying, I don't want to be an engineer. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? And he said, model virtual reality with the computer geniuses. And I just said, if you've done what you just did, you can do anything you want.
Sure.
And had taken a minor his minor was in computer science. So he ended up getting a job in Santa Barbara in a virtual reality company for $10 an hour. And 2 years later, he was hired by some place in New Zealand, and he was head of all the virtual effects for all 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh, that is amazing.
But this isn't the end of the story. But a few years ago, he and I were having breakfast at the beach I used to scour the perimeter of looking for him. And we were having this wonderful breakfast, and all of a sudden he stopped talking, and he looked around, and then he smiled at me really big and said, remember when I'd cut school and you used to come do donuts in the parking lot looking for me? And I was like, yeah, I remember. And he smiled again, and he said, you want to know where I was every single time? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he said, up on top of the bluff, eating a really great takeout breakfast, watching you drive yourself crazy.
The secret has been found out.
And so while he was driving me crazy, he was also taking care of what he needed to learn to be able to succeed. And he told me when my son, when we were driving to his brother's memorial, he told me, he said, you know, as long as John was alive, I knew I was part of a really smart family. But at the first, he didn't think he was smart because his brother was so smart. But he also saw his brother as his inspiration, that he too had the same genetics, that he too had the same potential, and all he needed to do was learn how to learn. And that's what he did. And I think that's a pretty amazing. I'm so, I'm just glad that he took the initiative to find the positive in this experience. And now I sort of see the two of them have become one person. He's like he's become the genius of his brother, and he's also become who he is as well. And it's the most amazing story I ever could imagine happening in front of my own eyes.
You had both of your kids were amazing.
They really were. And, they forced me to be who I am now. I would never have done any of the things I have done without John being who he is. He is still forcing me every day. It's been 30 years and I'm still learning from him. 3 days ago was his death day. I was at his grave. I'm always at his grave on his birthday and death day. And I'm asking for support, and I'm asking for inspiration. Help me move forward. Help me. What do I need to do now? What will, where do I need to go? And magic happens. Nobody knows in cemeteries, magic happens. And I've had so many amazing experiences, and I know that I feel that he's still with me, and I know that I have a mission on earth to help other people survive what he didn't. And that's all I'm trying to do. And I will do for that forever.
And Sally, let me ask you this: for a mother that is going through grief, a parent that is going through grief, whether they child left through natural causes, involuntary or voluntarily lost their life. What is one thing or one piece of advice that you can give to them?
Okay. What happens to us happens, but what we do about it is ours to do. Suffer, learn, grow, live through the pain. Your child or whoever you lost didn't come to destroy you. He came or she came to celebrate, to enrich your life. How we die is how we die, but don't concentrate on the negative. Concentrate on what they gave you in life and be appreciative and be grateful. And also learn the lessons that they taught you from living and dying, and then live the solutions. If you do that, then they mattered. Then you're making a difference. They're still here because you're doing the work that they taught you to do. And they taught it with their life and with their death. Don't ever think that they did anything for nothing. No. But we have to make it, the survivors have to make it so. They've given us so much information, whether it was a terrible experience or whether it was a success, whatever it was, there are lessons. Live the lessons.
I like that. There's a lesson in everything that we go through.
Mm-hmm.
There, no matter how negative it is, negative the situation,
Mm-hmm.
Because some situations are bad.
No.
Some situations are bad,
Yeah.
and you can't see what the future has for you.
No.
I'll add to that. Going through my darkest times, it did change me and made me who I am today. I will say that before that, I didn't know. As a child, being raised without a father figure and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then going through that, there is a level of resilience on the other end of that, because you come to a realization. For me, I came to a realization that it was only me.
Yeah.
And there was no turning back. And everything rested on my shoulders. From having my son, and I tell people, and I say this, and I say this all the time because I feel like it's true. Just like you, Sally, my son, I would say saved my life.
Yes.
Because at the time, I wasn't on the best path.
Mm-hmm.
I was merely trying to survive a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know where I wanted to go. I had dropped out of college. And it looked like just, living a life of just working,
Mm-hmm.
day to day, paycheck to paycheck, and everything. And when my son was born, something told me, like, you have to be better. I didn't have a great example. My dad wasn't there. So I didn't have the best example of being a man, what a man should do, or anything, right? There was father figures, but nothing consistent. Okay. So knowing that I didn't have that, and knowing that I wanted to be that and be the guidance and provide something different for my child when he grew up and he ventured out on his own,
Mm-hmm.
and changing the trajectory
Mm-hmm.
of what people could consider something normal in my family, and doing something more with it.
Yeah.
So when he came along, and I was granted custody of him because I forced myself to be in his life. Then I was granted custody of him at a young age. I knew that a high school diploma just wasn't going to cut it. And I had to go back to school, just as yourself, had to go back to school and pave a different path
Mm-hmm.
for him
Mm-hmm.
so he can be in an environment to be better,
Mm-hmm.
to do better, and to have more
Mm-hmm. Amen.
choices, more options, just overall quality of life that some of us didn't have coming up, and we couldn't really carve that path until we got older or got forced into a situation we had to carve that path to get older.
This all you have suffered has grown you. All that you suffered in in ways that you couldn't have known then has grown you. And you did the most amazing thing. You thought about your thinking. You thought about what you wanted to be for your son. So when you think about your thinking, think about the past and think about what happened to you, then you have choices. Do I pass this forward, or do I
Mhm.
do something different? Do I make it better because of what I've learned? A lot of people don't think about their thinking. They don't think about what has happened to them. They just keep going
Yeah,
forward, trying to go forward. But the thing is that any kind of trauma is piggybacked into your very cells.
yeah,
And if you don't think about those things and work on them and think, I don't want to do that, I don't want to ever have anyone experience that if I can help it. I want to be the better person. I want to do what I would have wished had been done to me instead of what did happen to me.
yeah,
If you do that, you have turned that paradigm around. You have left it in the dust. You have given it back to its, the history, and let the lie in the dust.
yeah,
But what you're doing is taking the problem and turning it into a solution
yeah,
that you're giving your son. And we have to realize that bad things happen to us. They're not to take us out. They're to grow us.
right.
We do not grow when everything's good. When everything's good, you just enjoy it. It
Hmm.
isn't anything that much to learn there, but when the wave drops and it gets dark and roily and it's really scary and dangerous and all kinds of bad things are happening, that's what we have to do. We have to survive that. but then we have to, that in itself will help deepen us and create more resilience and more depth, and we have more to that more perspective than other people who just have a very easy thing where nothing bad ever happens to them. I
Mm-hmm.
feel for them because they're not going to have a chance to grow much.
Right.
But when things really fall into disarray and it's horrible and it's ugly and it's terrifying, or it's in, whatever those things are, and you are a victim or whatever, if we survive what we survive, we can do something about.
Mm-hmm.
And you did. And God bless you, because you took a negative thing and you left it in the past.
Yeah.
And you may still have that in your mind and your experience in your body, which we will always have, but you haven't passed it forward.
Yeah. Sally, I would like to thank you tremendously for coming onto the show, sharing your story, sharing your experience. I know it's not easy, and I know it's nothing that will ever go away.
No.
It's part of your history. It's part of who you are. Farewell, fans. Right now I'm at a loss of words. This has been a very emotional episode for myself, and Sally, I would say the same for you as well. We will see you on the next episode. Definitely tune in to the next interview that we have, and the live show and the solo shows. I will see you on the next go around. Peace.
Okay.